Almost there. Hold on. Setting up.
Keith.
It says it's done. It's redirecting.
It says we're live on YouTube now.
Okay, you're live.
Are you sure we're live?
Yes, you're live.
1.01, call the meeting to order. Roll call, Mary Johnson,
Here.
A. Kellen,
Here.
Mike Lopez,
Here.
Keith Odoms. Keith,
I'm here.
Linda Rappaport, Linda?
Here.
Rob Rubin,
I'm here.
Here.
Eddie Schleichauer,
Present.
James Spencer,
Yeah.
John Lumi here. Pledge of Allegiance, please to remain standing to honor people who passed away. Retired teacher Jeanette Sutherland, retired teacher Carol Nugent, retired teacher Elizabeth Portman, and retired custodian James Bowers. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. (2.02) Public comment on agenda items. Comments related to the agenda items are welcome at this time. Please limit time for each speaker to 3 minutes. Please submit comments on the form. A total of 30 minutes at the beginning of each board meeting is set aside to allow for public comment on agenda items only. Individual comments on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes and are welcomed. Based on the open meeting law and board policy 1230, debate or dialogue with board members is not allowed during the meeting. Compliments or complaints about student discipline, specific student issues or personnel must not be addressed during public comment. Comments or questions submitted through the use of public comment form will be sent to the appropriate staff member or will provide a response on the district public response webpage. If you wish to address items relating to our school district that are not on tonight's agenda, another comment period is provided at the end of the meeting for that purpose. In the interest of civility and respect for different points of view, clapping, booing, or any disturbance or disruption is not permitted. At this time, comments relating to agenda items are welcome. Please state your name and the agenda items you're speaking. Alberta, are there any comments that you want to read on the agenda items? Alberta?
1 second. I have no comments that are on agenda items at this time.
Okay, thank you. 2.03 board goals, subcommittee report and approval of goals. Keith, it's all yours. Keith?
Yeah, hold on 1 second. I'm just bringing it up.
Do you want me to read it?
No, I got it. What goes? Resolved that the Board of Education of Wappinger Falls Central School District hereby adopts the Board of Education goals for the 2020-21 school year as stated.
So moved.
Ruben and Mary Johnson, second. Discussion.
Does anybody have any questions on this?
I think you were.
Comments?
Jimmy? Unmute yourself,
sorry.
Jim.
I'm sorry. Under cultural responsiveness, would this include to develop something on both the building level and district-wide for each building?
Actually, when we had this discussion, it was in that nature to help formulate some sort of thing, both building and district level, so that we can, any future stuff, we didn't want to limit it to just one specific issue right now. We wanted to keep it so that it would be able to evolve over time as issues of that nature come forward, like we discussed in our conversation. So yeah, it would have that as well.
Okay, great. I'm just thinking that each building is going to have its own like personality, and I think different perspective. So I wouldn't want to just have one blanket responsiveness committee and not take into consideration each individual building and their feelings on it. So thank you, Marie.
Are there any other comments?
Yeah, this is I have a comment. So in regards to the committee, this is just pretty much the beginning of it. You have to build it out. Is that the next step, building this whole process out?
Okay, so I'll just go into a little quick thing. When we started this out, I did call everybody up and I asked everybody what they wanted to go forward with. The cultural responsiveness actually is a little bit of what Mr. Carrion has touched on in conversations with some of us and different members of the board, different areas that we all had concerns that we want to be able to build out. And it's something, this is the starting point to be able to start it. Obviously, nothing's going to happen overnight and just poof, everything is fixed. But this is, to me, the first step of being able to get something together to be able to address issues as they come up. And as Mr. Spencer said, different schools have different personalities. You know, we have 3 high schools and all 3 of them are amazing and all 3 of them have different personalities, just like our 2 junior highs and our 10 amazing elementary schools. So everybody's got their own niches and their own things that come up, and this would be a way for us to be able to bring it forward and address it as it comes forward. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other comments? I'll make a comment. I'd like to thank Marie.
I have a question.
I'm sorry?
I have a question.
Linda?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I have a question. And actually the question, I guess, is more for Jose. I mean, do you see this as adopting a curriculum, you know, that would be used in all the schools? Or, I mean, I think the issue with having each school come up with their own is that it may not address all of the points that we want to address. I mean, how do you see us going forward with that?
Well, the way I see this one component, I think it speaks explicitly to curriculum. And so it would be, I would cut and paste it because it could be something that could just be operational. It's differently written from the first 2 in a way, like it just seems more administrative in scope. So it would be just a cut and paste. But quite frankly, like, we have every intention to revisit our shared decision-making that we have to submit to the state education department for our shared decision-making committee and what's expected of the schools. So when I see something like this, I would make sure that, you know, we do talk about each school having their own cultural responsiveness committee. I think what we're talking about here, I think when it comes to curriculum, you're talking about 2 things. So if we're talking about the actual explicit conversations about being culturally responsive, then that's part of curriculum. If we're talking about having a curriculum that's inclusive and to ensure that our curriculum is representative of all cultures, ethnicities, and race, then that's another piece, which we do a lot with our classroom libraries. We try to get a lot of that we try to make sure that we don't have these curriculums where children open books and they don't see people that look like them in the books and things of that nature. So I think we're juggling 2 things here. And if it's to make sure that our curriculum is representative, is representing our community, it's representing a cultural responsiveness. That's one thing. Now we're talking about the explicitness of like social studies and English and continue to really see what, let's just take, for example, civil rights movement and see that there's lessons to talk about what does the civil rights movement look like now in comparison to what it looked like in 1965, let's say. So then that's curriculum that's explicit to the social studies, to making sure that the types of essays in an English class are questions that are very much inclusive of all different types of ways students can represent to write an expository essay or compare and contrast essay, so on and so forth. But I do see, like, I could just take this and cut and paste it and add it to, because it's more concretized than the first two. The first two seem much more global in scope.
Answer your question, Linda?
Um,
Peggy?
Yeah, I think when we were making goals for board goals, we were thinking in terms of broad goals that the administration would implement as they saw fit to achieve the goals that we had there. We wanted to have some accountability, though, so that they were SMART goals and that they were specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, but also that you had some flexibility. Am I correct? The rest of the members of the
Yeah.
committee?
Yes, I believe you are.
Any other comments? Well, I'd like to thank the people in the committee, Marie Johnson, Linda Rappaport, as well, Ms. Becky Kellen, for working on these goals. I know they worked extremely hard, so thank you for all your efforts. And with that being said, 3.01 Superintendent's Report.
Have to
Hey.
vote on them, John.
We have to vote. You're right.
Yes.
All those in favor,
Oh, that.
raise your hands. Ruby,
No,
I'm sorry,
I'm voting no.
you said no?
That is correct. I said no.
Okay, the votes are 8-1. All right, I thought, Linda, we got you. All right, with that being said, Superintendent's Report 3.01. Jose, it's all yours. Before you start, I want to repeat what Ms. Rappaport said about the effort of you and your staff as being Herculean. I really appreciate what you did and your staff.
I didn't hear that, Ms. Trustee Rappaport, so thank you. And thank you, President Lumia. Good evening.
She wrote it in an email, I believe.
I did my Q&As today. I did my Q&As today, but thank you. So, so I'd like to get started. And I think, as I mentioned, and I've reiterated with the task force and the subcommittees and everybody we've been working with, and I do communicate with the president of the Board of Education to just really ensure that the work that we're doing was really based on really providing the assurances and writing to those assurances that were part of the guidance document in the State Education Department. I clearly have said this. I don't know if Governor Cuomo gets all the way to Wappingers and hears what we have to say, but I always clearly give the example of special education at the very last hour when he said school districts may reopen and provide extended schools year for students with disabilities. So I don't know what it means, to be very honest with the board and our community, what it means to hear Governor Cuomo's announcement. So when you hear, there's a lot of detail to the guidance report. I don't want to say anything to the DO about the DOE, but there was an article in the New York Times about their 30 pages of submission for their guidance report. And we have 51 pages where we provided a lot of detail. However, I think that, and I know my team that's listening right now, they're gonna crack up because I say this over and over again. Like, once we can hear from the governor, then we can really start solidifying a lot of those the meat and potatoes of what it means, of all of what it is that we're talking about. So I can provide an example of that in terms of really thinking about, let's just say, how students would come in. So if the governor says you must have a hybrid model, I know that in a very small district with different boundaries, they may be looking at last names. It may not be the most ideal way for us to divide our students to come 50% of the time to school, because we have some very, very large neighborhoods where we may be able to look at that and say, take, for example, Brinkerhoff Elementary School, and Trustee Callan was very much involved with the K-6 configuration and understanding Merritt Boulevard per se, and understand that neighborhood alone may not say, why are we doing last names when we can take almost half the school of Brinkerhoff, or a great portion of Brinkerhoff, to go from Merritt Boulevard to on 2 days a week. So that's just an example of what I'm saying, that delving into these details are something that our team really, we all 100% really are waiting for the governor's order exactly to hear what he has to say, how he's going to say it, and everything that we have written, everything that we have stored away, everything that we have discussed, the work that Dr. Cardwell is doing with her team, the work that Mr. Zip is doing around social and emotional well-being, the details to transportation, nutrition, so on and so forth, the technology, connectivity, so on, all of it. We have it. And then it's just a matter of how does this best fit if the order is going to be much more specific in detail on how we're to return to school, or how we're not going to return to school. And so that's really important. And I think if you read the first part of the document that was submitted to the state, that was clearly indicated in the first page of the submission and to the letter, that the introductory letter. So what I like to do is just provide a really brief presentation. As I shared in the weekly memo review, there is nothing new to this presentation. It's just cut and paste. It's a synopsis of what's in the guidance document, and just thought to highlight some of these things. So myself, Darren, and Kristen will chime in. If we go to the next page where we talk about categories, you will see the different categories, how the guidance document was broken into. And it goes from communication, family and community engagement, all the way to incidental and substitute reports, to teacher and principal evaluations and what that would look like, and everything else in between. So I'm gonna just go and continue with these categories instead of repeating them over. So just to talk about communication, family and community engagement, even though we have some of these things written here, and I saw the work that Trustee Johnson with the team did in terms of communication. So this is a real good, alignment, and this is what I love to see too, is when we're talking about communication and we're able to look at our report, our guidance document. So the bottom, you will see all the ways that we've been communicating and the platforms, district website, our call list, our email blasts, online training, social media accounts used by the district. In addition to that, I always say that Wappingers was acting like Governor Cuomo since March. So we were providing continued updates to our community, sometimes as many as 3 a week. And I think for the most part, twice a week. And then we kind of slowed down to once a week in terms of providing communication. But all of the communication that we provide, we really have to adhere to the CDC, the New York State Department of Health, and understanding that the New York State Department of Health supersedes the guidance document that was created by the State Education Department. Moving forward, definitely health and safety, that is probably the biggest portion of the document when in terms of really looking at all the things we have to consider. And I just wanted to highlight a couple points here, that if students need to feel comfortable and safe returning to school campuses, and our district continues to work. We do work closely with the Dutchess County Department of Behavioral and Community Health, which is the Office of Executive Officer Mark Molinaro, and working with local capacity within our region in terms of hospitals. And as I said before, there's a lot of redundancy, all having to do with the CDC, the DOH, and the New York State Department of Education. Again, with the health and safety of our students. Oh, I did not, that's the same page. I apologize. How come is that? Oh, and here we talk about social distancing. And I know that Trustee Kellen did send an email from a webinar, I believe, that she participated in. And I think today I spoke to wearing a mask and social distancing. And at a certain point, although the plan, the final plan and what we're going to do specifically for the community and what's not going to be negotiable, we do want the support and the blessing and the sanctioning of the Board of Education, although it does not require to get approved by the Board of Education, the entire guidance document. However, what I also like to say, and I shared with President Lumia, that in the very near future, and that's why I'm not taking a great amount of time today, once we hear from the order from the governor, we'd like to have just a special meeting and really try to create a digital town board to really talk about, as I said before, our meat and potatoes. So moving to the next slide, we talk about facilities. And I can tell you right now that Director Bross has been working diligently with his team. They put a document together that is super impressive, and it's in draft form right now. And we will be sure that that would be part of this extensive workshop that we would provide to the Board of Education. But we've had very long conversations about our facilities and how we would utilize certain materials in our facilities, what we're not allowed to do, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of details that are into the plan that Ron did such a great job in putting together. Kristen is here, so she can talk very briefly about our nutrition.
Hi, everyone. So
Hi.
just we have multiple options that would be available to the district depending on the governor's press conference in the very near future. We have the opportunity to feed students on site. We have the opportunity to go back to the remote model. If it's a hybrid, we'll be doing both. How are we going to feed these students? Are they coming through the lunch line? Are they going to use the cafeteria? Are they going to be staying in their classroom? Are we delivering food there? Probably a pretty similar setup to the remote pickup that we had in the past. It's just important to note that as of right now, the free and reduced status students would, everybody's status would go back to what they were effective pre-COVID in March. And then applications would begin for the free and reduced. So no longer would it be 100% free meals to all Wappinger Central School District students. So we need to figure out a way as well to make sure that we can track that, whether we're doing that delivering to a classroom or if we're doing that remotely. We will also be training all staff and students, no sharing of beverages or food, no food on the school bus. These are all important pieces of information that we need to make sure we share. On the next slide, I believe it's transportation.
Kristen, that the conversations we've already had with our principals, some of our principals, because we have them in teams, and based on similarities in terms of size, really much more in terms of size or in terms of the level, like high school level, middle school level. But then we have four different elementary school teams that, no, 3 different elementary school teams that are working on the meat and potatoes with the administration. But with that said, this is one area that's very important, because if we do return back to school, and as you know, sometimes board members get letters from community members, our facilities are also different. So this is an area where we know there may be some differentiation in how we would distribute food from one school to the next. just wanted to share that just in case the board was to get a letter to say, oh, at Evans, they do it this way. I don't understand why they can't do it the same way at Gay Head. Okay, thank you. Transportation, Kristen, sorry.
Sure. Currently, transportation, we are working on routing everyone 100% as if school was coming back in full session. That way we don't miss any students. We make sure that we've captured every bus route, every bus stop, because we do have 100% transportation in the district. So as the information becomes more readily available to us, we'll be able to make adjustments to our transportation based on the number of students who will be participating, based on the number of students who are coming to school on any given day. We will really be able to refine that process, and transportation will work very closely with building level administration to figure out how we're going to stagger, how we're going to get these students loaded on the bus. Are we going to have seating arrangements? Because really you want the first ones on to be the last ones off. So we want to make sure there's limited movement passage past students as they ride in their seats. There are also rules in place with regard to social distancing, siblings in the same household. We'll do our best to accommodate those as well, which could increase our bus ride capacity, our bus load capacity. The important piece here, the important piece here is remember, masks must be worn by all students. They'll have to be given a mask if they do not get onto the vehicle with a mask, and no hand sanitizer on a bus.
Yes, thank you. And also, this was a very important piece that as a county, we came up with the magic number to say that 22 to about 24 students would work to ride to and from school while we're still living through this pandemic. But it can go up to 30 if you have a certain elementary school where, let's say, there's 2 or more siblings that live in the same household still attending the same elementary school. So they would be able to sit together, and from where sitting together, we would continue to practice social distancing. The social emotional well-being, I'd like to go back to what Trustee Rappaport and Trustee Johnson and Trustee Cullen were talking about. So this is another component to the social well-being that a lot of it in the beginning will be explicit instruction and training, explicit instruction that we would provide to our students and their families. But the pandemic has hit hard, and it's been something that no one ever anticipated in this country. So there will be, we've been talking about looking at our curriculum and revisiting some of our curriculum so that there are items that will go on that will be an integral part to other content areas as we continue to work. For example, an art piece about, sharing your expression about how did it feel many times when you were at home, or really recreating, keeping the skill set in English class, but maybe recreating the questions that may be asked for a essay, things of that nature. So there will be things that are explicit as far as social emotional well-being, as well as how we would look at it from an integral component. Moving forward, I put the school schedules and teaching and learning together, because if you look at the document, it's almost like one is the managerial component, the scheduling, but then it's the same language of what we would be doing in terms of how we would be looking at school. And I think this is the most critical component. And I don't want to get into so much detail about the surveys that we receive, because that's going to be that special meeting. But we are so lucky. We received over 10,600 replies from our community in terms of the form that we sent out. And I know many of our parents, and I just want to take this moment, if they're out there listening, thank you so very much for even emails to ask other questions, further questions. But these questions were purposely omitted right now, because we do really want to hear what the governor has to say. And we don't want to send any message out there that could be rather confusing if we do get thrown a curveball come this week or by the end of this week. But what we know for sure that under the pandemic, from many of the categories that you saw in the beginning on the spreadsheet, the 12 categories, we're not able to open 100% in person unless the DOH, the Department of Health, changes and makes some of these rules more lenient, the State Education Department as well. But as we stand right now, owning our own fleets, not being able to hire an additional 1/3 of teachers, there's so many components to the very beginning, facilities, health and safety, so on and so forth. As a DOH is written right now, Wappingers would not be able to open 100% in person. But what we do know is that if we open in person, whether it's the remote or the hybrid model, so that's why the school schedule and the teaching and learning, I just merged it together because this is a synopsis of this report. We do want to make sure that optimum teaching and learning will take place. And these components that you see from creating and foster culturally responsiveness, as you can see, Trustee Spencer, when you asked your question, is right up there. It's right up there, and we want to make sure that we attend to all of the needs, all of the different needs of our family members and our learners in Wappingers, to looking at how we would provide synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities. Now, the hybrid model that the entire county is pretty much looking at is the one that you see here highlighted in yellow and blue, with highlights in yellow and blue. 50% of our students would attend school 2 days a week, and then the other 50% would attend another 2 days a week. And then on Wednesday or one day of that week, we would have a virtual learning, remote learning for all students. Now, if you read the guidance document as well, and I just really want to point this out, that if you look at each day as 20%, 5 days a week, so students will be in person 40%, but we may have students. The document highly encourages you, if you go into a hybrid model, to try to get your students with disabilities in as much as you can, your primary grade level students in as much as you can, and as well as your English language learners as much as you can. So going back, because of the way I work, and you know, my leadership style is to be inclusive and work in collaboration, that if one of these subcat groups, if we were not able to fit all 3 of these subgroups, as I just stated, indicated which ones they encourage you to bring, I would love for the board to help and sanction to say, well, then let's start off with our students with disabilities, or let's start off with our kindergarten students and our grade 1 students to try to get them in there 80% of the time. So these are things that, although it's not required, I think it's important to get the support, the blessing, the sanctioning of the Board of Education doing this type of work that we will create and present real soon. Darren? Do you want to talk, Darren? Do you want to talk about the attendance and absenteeism?
Sure. So one of the tricky parts about implementing school in a hybrid model and or 100% remote online learning is to take into account daily attendance. But in fact, that's one of the requirements made presented to us by the state guidance documents, was that daily attendance needs to be taken every day of all students with an expectation that it doesn't matter which instructional model they're in, that we come up with a system to actually account for all student learning throughout the day. That, of course, is trickier for period-based attendance as we get to the secondary schedules. But there is an expectation that all attendance must be taken, and that we need to follow the same procedures, basically, that we would in a normal school year on a normal school day. We would have to identify early on patterns of poor attendance for each individual student and come up with intervention strategies for those students to help improve their participation in their learning experience. So whether it be creating, more positive approaches to instruction, to getting kids more excited about learning. It's very difficult, obviously, with 100% remote to reach all kids and to make sure that all kids are coming along at their grade level with the same as their peers. We need to make sure that they are, and that we are creating an environment that kids actually want to come and be engaged and attend and get instruction. Second slide about attendance is basically the same thing. We're going to have to just create systems of support for parents, teachers, and students that might impede their learning progress, to make sure that if they can't check in, that we're finding ways that they can check in, and identify ways to make sure that people are understanding what learning is supposed to look like in the different environments.
That's about technology and connectivity. I didn't change the title. Sorry.
Okay. So with regards to technology and connectivity, we, after posting the plan, we have had additional questions sent my way with regards to Chromebooks and access to devices and connectivity. And for example, we have incoming new families, incoming kindergarten families asking if we're going to be able to loan them Chromebooks and computers and other devices. And obviously we have to take into account where everyone is at, assess where the needs are, and do our best to provide resources to them, just as we did in the spring. But most of our resources that we loaned out in the spring, there's 1,700 plus devices still loaned out to families. We have a handful of devices still left, but we're not able to order more. So one of the things we did try and look into was trying to get a head start on ordering more devices, but our main manufacturer, who we order from primarily would be Dell, says that we wouldn't be able to get our hands on any new hardware into probably January. So it's definitely going to be, as we fluctuate between in-class and online learning, it's going to be very tricky to make sure that we're able to supply our families with devices from the district's perspective. But we're going to do our best to do what we can with that. But just keep in mind that the more devices we loan out to our families from our buildings means the less devices, which there'll be hardly any at this point, that'll be available for students to use while in school. So there's definitely going to be some disjointedness as teachers try to transition from in-class to online learning during the week, especially noting that we have Wednesdays as 100% online. It's going to be very difficult for the district, for staff, and possibly for students to be able to transition between online and in-person learning when we don't have enough resources either at home or now in school. So it's a tricky spot, and unfortunately not one that we could just throw money at in terms of ordering new technology to supplement where we're lacking. But we're going to have to do our best with that.
So with that said, and talking about bilingual education and world languages, one of the things, we still have 3 very strong languages that we teach here at Wappinger Central School District, and what that would look like in terms of instruction. As a former foreign language teacher myself, for a period of years, in terms of students not being able to see how teachers are using their mouth to create pronunciations and things of that nature. These are some of the conversations that we had, but I just wanted to bring that up. In addition, Lizette, our former director, Lizette Ruiz, is now our assistant superintendent in Carmel. And between she and I, we were very resourceful at the central office registration with helping the intakes of English language learners. But as you can see, during COVID, whether remote or hybrid, that tends to happen immediately. You will have up to 30 days to work out the process and identifying our English language learners. I saw President Lumia nod his head back and forth, and I just want to say that I do appreciate that, because that's how we live as a team. We just keep thinking, like, how is this all really going to mesh together and come together in terms of in person? So the last thing I didn't want to bring up as a category substitute teachers, because right now, to me, the principal and teacher evaluation, that's important. And the work that we've been talking with Dr. Bonk in terms of what we may have to look at, how we may have to recreate some memorandum of agreements of how we create the evaluation system under a remote or hybrid model. So what I wanted to do is really provide just this really brief presentation. And if you haven't had the opportunity to read the entire document, I wanted to provide this so that when the governor has his order, I will be able to sit with Vice President Odoms, President Lumia, and Alberta to Ms. Pedro to create a special meeting that would be an entire workshop. And then that would allow you to now make a connection. What was coming out of the governor's order, how are we going to address these 12 categories in much more specificity? And I gave an example about, let's just say with teaching and learning. If we can't get all three of those groups, how they're highly encouraging us to bring them in every day, 80% of the time, then how would we look at that? So we have recommendations to make already. We have all of this information, but to get our parents, and this is purposeful, to get our parents to say, well, the report said it was going to be first with students with disabilities, and then go with primary grades, kindergartners and first graders. And now you're saying that, you turned it around to say that it's students, first graders and kindergartners trying to get them in 80% of the time. Our goal is to really try to get as many students as we possibly can 80% of the time without compromising anyone's health, and making sure that we don't do anything that goes against the CDC, the DOH, and the guidance document that was provided by the State Education Department. So thank you for your time, and thank you.
Thank you, Jose, and I'm sure we'll have a meeting as soon as we hear from the governor. We'll have a special meeting, and at that time, we'll I'm sure the board will make some recommendation one way or the other.
And I would greatly appreciate that.
All right. With that being said,
Mr. Lumia, may I give compliments to those?
You can do whatever you want, Ruby.
No, you can't.
Go ahead, Ruby.
I would just like to give compliments. This to me is what we've been handed, Mr. Cavion, is basically a jigsaw puzzle where none of the pieces really adequately fit together. It's a million-piece jigsaw puzzle with so many question marks in it that I don't know if the state knows what they're doing or has to figure things out on the fly. But you've done an incredible, you and your team have done an incredible job in assembling this document that really there's more questions. When I look at what the state is saying, I have more questions than they can't be answered at this point. So great work.
Thank you. Much
If
appreciated.
anybody read the 51 page in its entirety, they would got a headache, as I did. And with that being said, 4.01 consent agenda resolution. Keith, it's all yours.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve.
Anybody want to pull anything?
I'm sorry.
Anybody want to
I
pull?
don't know if anybody does, but don't we have to see if anybody wants to pull anything first from the consent agenda before we do that?
You're under, Marie, you are a genius. Does anybody, I'm sure nobody wants to pull anything. Does anybody want to pull?
Nobody want to pull anything.
Does anybody want to pull
I
anything?
do. I do.
Eddie, who?
Oh, Rob does?
Ruby?
Rob Rubin, yes.
Ruby, what do you want to pull?
4.02, line item 12.
Number 12. Oh,
Number
okay.
12.
Anybody else? Seeing none, sure. Anybody else? Marie, want to pull anything?
Okay.
Eddie? Okay. With that being said, Keith, you got the floor.
I don't have anything additional.
Very good.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the following consent agenda items as stated. 4.02 with exemption of line item 12, 4.03, 4.04, 4.05, 4.06, 4.07, and 4.08.
All those in
So
favor?
moved.
What's that, Christian, Kellen, second, Marie Johnson? All those in favor of those, raise your hand.
Yes. Aye.
I say yes.
Aye.
With
Yes.
that being said, 4.02, number 12, Ruby.
4.0 number 212 reads, "Be established the position of a .5 bilingual typist as per memorandum dated 7/21/20 from the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction to the Superintendent of Schools." So my question is, and I'll say I hope you had a chance to read this in an earlier email of mine, was has any investigation been made as to the bilingual services that are, I'm sorry?
Go ahead, Ruby.
Has any investigation been made as to the bilingual services that are available? When I worked in hospitals, AT&T was a prime example. They had this where bilingual translation services are available. Has any investigation been done into that? And if so, what is the cost?
Yeah, well, first of all, the cost is astronomical. The other component too is that we do contract with companies that do the writing of translations in different languages. I'd like to go back now to Trustee Johnson's cultural responsiveness goal, but this is 0.5 because we could only do it. It's coming out of federal money, and so that's what we can afford. But for a district our size, we should definitely be looking to have this resource on the southern end and on the northern end of town so that we're able to provide these services. I personally enjoy meeting the families. I personally like getting out there when my assistance is needed, but it does take a rather long time. So yes, to contract out when many schools have this position already, and understanding that this is a very a community that comes in, and they're not just coming in as from another state per se. They're coming in from a whole different cultural dynamic where there's so much information that you have to provide and get them and kind of give them a short training for each family as they come in to register. Yes.
Thank you.
Marie?
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to make sure that everybody understands this. So if I'm clear. So basically, it would only be for translations for registration, but say a family what do we do for right now for families that come in for say a CSC meeting or something of that nature?
Oh, no,
Is that the same?
We have several people throughout the district, but in our central office, we don't have anyone. It was Lizette and I, and now it's just me.
Great. Okay, I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Mr. Carry on. Yes, Mr. Carry on.
Ruby.
Mr. Rubin.
Yeah. Assuming that this passes, and I believe it will, but are we being led to believe that we will see no further cost for bilingual services?
That's a loaded question. I can write to that in the weekly memo review. There's so much to bilingual education, and the fact that we have less than 2% of our population, which is unheard of. And right now, if you look at every school district, we have a very tiny population of English language learners. But if we were to ever grow, we would be mandated and required based on numbers to then provide bilingual education. So this is, as they say, fluid. This is now a way of looking at who are our students. Anything can change from one school year to the next, pending how our demographics can change.
Hey, I love to ask loaded questions and then step back and see who jumps on the hand grenade. That's all. Okay, thank you.
Very good, Ruby. With that being said, all in favor of
I think we need a motion.
motion,
so
go ahead,
moved.
Peggy. Peggy, second. He second. All those in favor, raise your hands.
Aye.
Aye. Ruby?
Yes.
Okay, unanimous. 5.01, adoption of new reading resource.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the grades K through 6 reading resource adoption of my own, as indicated in a memo dated July 29th, 2020 from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction to the Superintendent of Schools.
Motion?
Move.
So moved.
Move.
Second.
Ruben made a motion, Kellen second. Discussion? Question, Linda? Unmute yourself, Linda. Unmute.
She's working on it.
No, I don't have a question, but I mean, I am not in love with computer programs for literacy, but I think that given the circumstances, this is the best possible option. I like the fact that it's authentic literature. I like the fact that it's going to be multicultural. So that's a way in elementary schools for kids to get that diversity perspective, multiple perspectives. I like the fact that it's aligned with the standards, that it is compatible with the workshop model. I don't know. I mean, I think that you can't share library books with COVID. You can't ask parents to spend money on personal libraries because it's expensive. And families don't always know, you know, number one, built into it is that it's leveled, which means that, you know, children are moved along the continuum based upon their, you know, where they are as readers. So, you know, you don't have a scattershot kind of thing where families are just buying any old book. So, you know, it's an organized program. I don't see any other way, you know, in the times that we're living in. So I think it's the best possible option.
Can I just
That's
add to
my
that?
2 cents.
Michael?
I'll add to that. We've been using that for years down in the New York City schools. Obviously, not every school has access to a library, and I mean, certainly my 7-year-old even uses it in his school. And I mean, the kids look at it. It's like a Netflix of reading. You know, they can just choose whatever their interests are. It reads to them, like Linda was saying. It's leveled. It goes along with all the other models and stuff. So it's great. I mean, even I've known teachers who use it with their young children. Like before my son was going to school, we're using it with him at home too. It's just the selection is great, and for a time when libraries are not an option, this is like by far an excellent choice to go with.
Peggy, I think you had a question.
Yes, I just would like to add that looking through it, I thought it was excellent. There's a great variety of books on every level, and number of nonfiction selections on any topic a child might be interested in, and genuine literature, as Ms. Rappaport mentioned. I know with the situation with remote learning, I know my grandson last spring, one of the things he especially missed was going to the library because the libraries were closed. And this would be very nice for them to have. I mean, he was fortunate that I have a lot of old children's books around that I could share with him, but not every child has that resource. So I thought this is a wonderful addition to what we're offering, since we will probably, since the children will at least part of the time be still on remote learning.
Any other questions? I'd just like to make a comment. I wasn't too familiar with it, and I wrote an email to Ms. Rappaport, and she educated me on the particular reading resource. And based on what she said, I was convinced that it's very important that we get this particular resource. With that being said, motion to take a vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Unanimous. Folks, 5.02, policy committee recommendation, cell phone and electric devices.
Resolved that the Board of Education of Wapages Central School District does hereby approve the cell phone and electronic devices policy for incorporation into the 2020-2021 Code of Conduct as recommended by the Policy Committee.
So
Motion.
So
moved.
moved.
Kellen and Ruben, second discussion. Jim,
Did we work out that one line where it prohibits use in the high school in common areas for all students? I know that was a concern for some parents, especially in cases of emergency. I just want to make sure that the building administrators have discretion, because I don't feel that we should be just totally prohibiting under all circumstances. I just want to know what the central office, if Jose can speak to his feelings on that.
well, before that, let's have Kellen, Ms. Kellen.
All right, we discussed this in the policy committee, and of course, in any emergency situation, the students only need to ask a teacher or administrator to let them use it. In K through 8, the students aren't allowed to have cell phones with them anyway, and they can always make a communication if they have a real need, and they just ask the teacher or administrator who will get them access to a telephone. The only reason that the senior high has been allowed phones, whereas K through 8 hasn't, is that a lot of high school students get to and from school on their own, not on a school bus, and they often have after school activities. So they may have need to communicate with their families if there's a delay or if they have car trouble and or God forbid an accident. But so therefore there's a reason why they would need them. And of course, if a teacher has an instructional reason why they want students to use them, that's permitted. But there's been a big problem in the schools with students videotaping each other, making comments back and forth on the cell phones about other students. It's a big bullying problem. And they have the opportunity now to have actual human interaction, rather not mediated by electronics. So they should be taking advantage of it.
Any other comments?
I just have a question. And this is Rob Rubin. Maybe you can answer this. And I don't know if you can, but with this policy, if we have remote learning where students are learning, say, from home, would this policy, you mentioned the word bullying, would it apply to that? Or maybe Darren could answer this, maybe. I'm just wondering how it would apply to remote learning situations.
All right, well, I would assume it would also apply if they're having a class situation at home, synchronous learning, and they shouldn't be bullying each other anyway. But of course, our ability to enforce it is limited when they're not with us. That was another thing. We felt that since they're going to be having a hybrid model with smaller classes and less free movement around the building, it will be easier for the teachers and administrators to implement this new policy with fewer students and less movement, so that while they get used to the new policy.
And the next agenda item, we wrote to it in the weekly memo
And
review.
before we go to the next agenda item, I've been on the board for 12 years, and this is the first time I'm proud of the board taking such a stance on the cell phone policy. So thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Michael, I think it was, and as well Dr. Bunk for come up with this particular policy. And with that being said, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. 5.03 to adopt the 2020-2021 Code of Conduct.
Be it resolved that the board hereby adopts the Code of Conduct for the 2021 school year as amended or as stated.
No, as
Policy-
amended.
as amended.
As amended. Go ahead.
As amended. policy number 5300, a copy of which shall be incorporated by reference into the minutes of this meeting. And be it further resolved that the code of conduct should be disseminated to all staff, students, and parents, legal guardians with instructions that the policies and rules therein must be reviewed and adhered to.
Move.
Mover Ruben and
Second.
second Kellen. Discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor, raise your
Aye.
hands.
Aye.
Aye. Everybody, yeah, Eddie?
No.
Okay. Got that, got that? Good. All right. Board members may request additional agenda items, discussion items, or requests for information. Are there any addition to the agenda? Seeing none. Communication from the public. Alberta, do we have any communication from the public? Alberta?
Yes,
Do
we
we have any-
do. Yes,
do
we
we-
do. Hold
Okay,
on, I'll have to get my timer.
no problem. I'll time you.
Okay, good.
Let me give myself,
Alberta, you do it.
no, don't, Alberta says, no. Marie Johnston, don't do that.
Okay,
Okay, in that case, forget about me. You do the timer.
okay, I'll do the timing. First one's from Layla Morrison. Hello, I'm a former student of John Jay High School, and I am currently working with the WCSD Change Movement to improve our schools for all students of color. I would like to say that now is the time to make impactful and important changes within our school district. POC and LGBTQ plus students need not only more positive representation, but the district needs to work harder to make school a safe place for these students. Enough is enough. Next comment is from Caitlin Weaver. The district needs to have an open conversation about its plans to better the education experience for BIPOC and LGBTQ plus students. Please schedule time to sit and talk with the WCSD change representatives, as they deserve to be taken seriously. Empower the marginalized groups of this district and our community overall. Next one's from Anna Rivera, John Jay class of 2018. Wappinger Central School District, as a large and respected district, has the opportunity to be a leader at the forefront of change in the education community. In the wake of the killing of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests around the nation, we have seen reform come about in many places, from governmental policies to the actions and intentions of companies both large and small. While the decision may not be supported by 100% of the faculty, staff, students, and parents within the Wappingers district, it is immensely important for the marginalized groups within our schools to know that their district stands with them and strives to make its educational environments inclusive and supportive. So please take the time to meet with the organizers of this initiative, show your students that you stand for racial justice and inclusivity, and empower the BIPOC and LGBTQ plus students of Wappingers. Jana Bryant, as a John Jay Senior High School alumna, I have witnessed firsthand how administration has handled situations dealing with minorities in the district. When a problem was to occur between whites and a minority, oftentimes the altercation would be thrown to the side and no consequences were made for the aggressor party. The minorities oftentimes were told not to speak to the aggressor. Meanwhile, the aggressor would still say things to the minorities, even things such as racial slurs. I feel that administration at every level needs to be trained on how to handle situations that arise between minorities and whites. With how our world is today, minorities are already oppressed outside of school and the world sees us as worthless. It's even harder to walk into school every day not knowing who you could talk to or know someone who will handle the situation correctly. I stand with everyone who has gone through racial discrimination in this district, and I will not stop until change occurs. And then last one is from Yvonne Gore. My name is Yvonne Gore. I'm a 2001 Royce Ketchum alumni who began one of the petitions for the Wappinger Central School District to eliminate the race-based Indian logos, mascots, and names. To your attention, I submit the excerpts from an article from the Poughkeepsie Journal dated July 30th, 2020. Descendants of the Wappinger natives say Ketchum should drop name, mascot, and logo. Quote, the mascots, names, and logos, all of it are problematic to some degree and should be changed. A representative from the Stockbridge Munsee Mohegan tribe said of athletic departments using Native American themes. That includes Roy C. Ketchum High School. The use of Native American names and imagery as mascots, Dave insisted, is racist and degrading. The National Congress of American Indians echoed that sentiment last week in an email to Wappinger Central School District officials, and the descendant of the Wappinger natives expounded on Tuesday. Indians is derived from when Christopher Columbus arrived and thought he was in the East Indies instead of the Caribbean, said Heather Brugel, historian and director of cultural affairs for the Stockbridge Munsee community. The term Indians is inaccurate when it comes to describing Native Americans or indigenous people. I think the mascot is a bigger issue, but the name should go as well. Instead of having names that are related to Native people, the best way to honor them and the land you're on is to learn the history and teach it, she said. It's important to us. A lot of these schools are sitting on ancestral Mohegan land. These counties are some of the places our ancestors lived and died or were removed from. The real honor would be to have that history accurately taught to students. As you will see, the Native American descendants agree that a change is necessary, and I implore the WCSD board to assign a committee to develop a plan, budget, and process to finally change the racist and offensive Indians mascot and all related imagery and the name. In addition, the district owes the Wappinger people an accurate representation of Native American history. That's the end of the comments.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Ruben, second. Kellen, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye. With that being said, have a good trip back tomorrow night, Linda.
Yes,
Take
safe
care.
trip.
Safe travels.